Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Global Nomads podcast. Today, we would like to invite Duncan Mitchell to a conversation with us. He's a director at GoodLife, a people leader, and a facility manager.
Really great to be here, Samir. Thanks for having me on.
Duncan, I'll start from where you came from the UK.
Yes.
Because typically, a lot of the people that we have on this podcast, they come from a bit further out.
Sure.
And UK and Canada are quite similar in the sense that they're all both part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So it's not that unique for people to come from UK. But I find, what I want to ask you is, there's still differences in the culture.
Yes.
So when you first moved here, you speak the language, you understand the people, but what were the differences in the culture that you faced?
Oh, gosh. So I took a fairly circuitous route to get here. Way back in 2005, I met a Canadian girl who was traveling, and this is the Commonwealth connection. She was traveling in England, and we met and hit it off. And only had about a 1-year visa to be in the UK. So as soon as we kind of realized that we wanted to continue our journey together, we started looking at opportunities. Where could we go? And Commonwealth countries are easy. So we ended up actually traveling. We were on the road for a few years. We went to New Zealand for 2.5 years and then to Australia for 3 years.
Oh, so you traveled the whole Commonwealth?
Traveled a bunch of it, yeah. And so throughout that, we were kind of visiting Canada, and I was getting to know her family. We were here for weddings and the births and things like that. So I'd got kind of a little bit of a taste of Canada, and the space really blew me away. It's easy to focus on such an obvious physical thing, but growing up in such a densely populated part of central England, suddenly, coming to a city like Calgary, which was under 1 million people back then, walking around downtown and seeing the size of the houses and the size of the yards and the space that everything had really, really took me aback. I was used to just people living on top of each other back home. So the space, the outdoors culture, especially in Calgary and being near the mountains, that was such a stark kind of reality. It wasn't a big deal to go to the mountains. It wasn't a big deal to be outside and camping and hiking and rafting and kayaking. That was something that really made a big impression on me. And throughout our travels, it certainly helped kind of capture my imagination and make me think that, Canada, Calgary particularly, could be an option to live long term. And you said, 2 English-speaking countries. There's, I'd say, maybe a bit more of a balance I found in Calgary with life versus work. A lot of people kind of working to live, not living to work, I think, in this part of the world. That was a real big kind of reality check for me.
It's funny that you say that, because we were recording another podcast, and the person we were talking to said the exact same thing. Yeah. Is that here people actually get to live, and not just think about the work all the time. You work, but you still have time to enjoy the other part of your life.
Absolutely. And that, made a big impression, and made, as our travels, we were growing up a little bit through our 20s, and as our travels were starting to, look at winding down, and we're thinking about settling down, buying a house, it was easy to kind of choose Canada or the UK. Her family were here, mine were back home in England, and to me it wasn't that hard of a choice. Getting the opportunity to live here and explore, kind of settling down here was a really easy choice for both of us.
No, and I guess you like the choices you made at that time. Okay.
Bluntly, that relationship didn't last. We moved to Calgary. And we continued to date I think we moved to Calgary at the end of 2010, and I think summer of 2013, that relationship came to an end, which, those things happen, but she was a really kind of vocal champion for me to stay in Canada. Mm-hmm. She was very much an advocate for, you like it here, you have a nice life here, you've made some friends here, you should stay. And she was right. She was really the one that steered me towards not running away from this massive life change.
It's good that she was able to champion it after like the relationship ended.
Big time.
Perfect. That is very nice to hear.
That's it. As those things go, it was, change like that is never fun or easy, but it was very civil. And she was the voice of reason, truly was, and knew the upside, and really leaned on me to stick around. And I'm so glad I did.
So, but you're now with GoodLife. When you came here, from my understanding, you were not in the gym business.
I was not in the gym business, no. When I moved to Calgary in 2010, I had been working for a mining company, and working in the mining industry in Australia.
Well, that's a bit big
which
change.
was a bit of a random one. So this is, I'll give you the shortest version I can. Post high school, I trained as a chef, and I spent the first few years of my working life working in restaurants. Got up to the point of running a kitchen. Worked for a wonderful chef and restaurateur back home. Taught me a ton of really important life lessons and great work ethic. The girl that I was dating, the Canadian girl, we were traveling around. She was a geologist by education, and 2007, 2008, capitalized on the minerals boom, the mining boom in Australia, and we moved there because she got a job as a geologist. I spent 10 days covering one of their chefs who had a family emergency. Just very, very fortunate. It's the week that she was being onboarded. She came home from the office one day and said, "Hey, they need a chef for 10 days." And I said, I don't cook anymore. It's been years. And she said, "Well, it pays X amount of money for 10 days work." And I said, "Done. I can cook for 10 days for that. That sounds great, right? Get that mining money as a, what was I, 23 years old probably at the time. And so I did. I went to site and I spent 10 days on this remote exploration site in the middle of northwestern Australia. And the cooking job was really easy, but the whole concept of exploration was fascinating to me. And I spent a lot of time in those 10 days asking a lot of questions and just interfering with the field work, and convinced the site manager to give me a job at the end of it, and started laboring, started working with their field crews, doing exploration work and, drill core processing, fixing trucks, welding, basically anything, just site management for this little exploration site. And we ended up staying for almost 3 years. And I, grew a ton of skills with my hands, fixing things, building things, doing all kinds of stuff, and working with the geologists on their programming and things. And, that job came to an end, said we were looking to kind of settle down and move to Calgary. And as we settled in Calgary, one of her high school friends ran his own business fixing fitness equipment. He'd kind of stumbled into it after college, was good at it, and he'd said, if you need a job, talk to me and we'll maybe see. So he gave me my first job in Calgary.
So was it for you at that time a survival job, or was it more?
100%. It was. We'd moved to Calgary. I needed work, and just very, fortunate to have a connection, and it's moving to a new place solo, or even with a very small circle like a family, is really daunting. Even moving to a new place with somebody who grew up there is still not without its challenges. Just very, very fortunate at that time that we had this contact who'd said, "Yeah, I'll take a chance on you." He'd met me 3 or 4 times. We'd had a beer here and wings, and that was it. And he said, "No, you've made a good impression, and I'll give you a job and teach you what I can." And really, really lucky. And just, I needed a job. I didn't think it was going to be a life changer by any means. It was work. It was money. While we got settled, we bought a house, and entirely by accident, entirely by happenstance, I did a job for a guy who lives in Calgary, who, I helped him out with some repairs and took care of a couple of things with some of his fitness equipment. And it turned out his brother is a VP at GoodLife, who's been running the kind of the facility management arm of GoodLife for 25 years, would be 15 plus years at that point, 25 years now. And he passed along my number to his brother and said, "Hey, if you ever need somebody good in Calgary, give this guy a call." And so I got a call out of the blue from somebody saying, "We're looking for people." And explored that avenue with GoodLife, and they were looking for a service manager in Western Canada. And I maybe overstated the leadership experience that I had. I felt like I was going to be able to do it, but I was worked hard. I was organized, convinced them they should bring me in as their service manager in the West, and came into the GoodLife in 2014 when the company was expanding very, very rapidly. At that point we were opening 25 to 40 clubs a year across the country. Oh. So there was a lot of heavy investment in their new clubs, in their infrastructure, and I just kind of caught it at the right time. We were adding a lot of people, we're adding a lot of resources, everything I asked for in terms of, needs for the business, I got told yes. It was just a very fortunate time to stroll into the company.
Dear friends, I would like to take a quick pause right now to say thank you to Sergey from New West Video for helping out with all of our visuals today. And if you want to find out more, there's a link below. And I would also like to say thank you to Angelica for helping with all the social media marketing. And guess what? There's also a link below to find out more. And also, one favor from you. Please like and subscribe. And share the video with your friends and family. You're talking about it being a fortunate time. But I also but I also know that you create your own fortune as well. So, when you say that you had a good conversation, you made a lasting impression, that they passed our number. And I think this is something that we need to do more of.
Sure.
Is remembering that, networking is not just about going to an event.
Sure.
But it's your day-to-day experience, because you never know where your next opportunity will come from.
That's such a great point, right? And it's, going into every interaction with good intentions. Mm-hmm. Something I've learned to do is say yes to things. It's if somebody says, hey, can you, and you said you're not always going to an event, but it's, are you able to help with this? Would you like to come to that? Say yes to things. Get yourself involved, talk to people. It's really silly, but make eye contact, say please and thank you. It's truly put your best foot forward with every interaction, and it's it could be a person at the grocery store, and it could be an executive of a company, and you never know when you're in a new place. Where I never want it to feel transactional at all. It's not what can I get out of this. It truly is approach every interaction with good intentions, yes. And it really can make a difference. It can open a door. It can open a conversation.
Exactly. I find that a story that was recently shared with me, where a person, they were hosting an event, and someone asked, "Why did you invite this person to do some of the activities at the event?" It was like a children's event. And the person who was hosting was like, "Why did you ask her? Like, I think she's a good person." "Yeah, but like some other person invited her, and she did an awful job." And then when the organizer asked the performers, like, "Why did you do a bad job?" "Oh, I didn't know that these persons are going to be at that event." So to me, that is the most worst approach they could do, because every time you have to put your 100%. Yes. Because you don't know who's in the room, who knows who, how people connect. People have uncles, people have aunts, people have brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues. The word can spread out so quickly. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, in the context of this, in terms of changing countries, making those major life changes, I don't know if as immigrants, we default to that, right? Because we don't know, maybe you're in a new place, you don't know who this person is, you don't know who that company is, you don't know what the stakes might be. Maybe it's easier to approach everything with that kind of, that open mind and that best foot forward. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, maybe that's too broad of a brush, but it's certainly something that's always served me well. And I said kind of saying yes to things. It's not always easy, and particularly again in a new place. I often hear, and as we get older, as I get older, I find that I've actually got a bigger and broader and more diverse circle of good friends now than I ever thought possible. And it's I talk to people, acquaintances, and they're like, how the hell do you even make friends as an adult, right? Yeah. It's, what do you do? And I'm like, say yes to things. If somebody says, let's go for a hike, say yes. If somebody says, let's go to this restaurant, say yes. Do whatever you can within your means and within your, your social battery, I guess, to be involved. And maybe you talk to somebody once and it doesn't go anywhere and that's that, but you gave it a shot, and because you never know which of those interactions you're going to click with somebody, and you make one friend and they've got a circle of friends, and now you've got you build a community, and it feels daunting, I guess, but that's always been one of my things. Just say yes to things.
No, and I like that advice, and I like that you pointed out that when we become adults, it's harder. Like, if I were to immigrate here when I was a student, it would have been a much different experience, because you already are in the room together with other students, right?
Exactly.
So it's easier.
You've got something in common.
Exactly. But how do you build that when you come here with a family, you don't know anyone, going from there? So one person at a time, saying yes, going to hikes, going to beers, going to some other things, depending on, what you enjoy, but also where you invite to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Team sports, I grew up playing sports as a kid, and then, start traveling. It's much harder to do that stuff.
Was it football?
I played football and cricket mostly.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I'm going to call it football. I'm not going to call it soccer.
Absolutely, yes. And it was when I moved to Calgary, through one of these kind of random connections, was, do you play golf? And I said, no, I never. My family didn't play. I never grew up playing golf, and so that's kind of wild. You grew up in the UK, in the home of golf, and I never played. It's, well, we should go and play golf. So next thing you know, I've got a golf club in my hands, and I've built a really, really wonderful kind of community of friends across the country that I know through playing golf, and that's. Said yes to something 15 years ago, and now I help organize a really small little charity golf event every summer, which was just 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
And it's this year we had 70 odd people come and play, and it's mostly we're friends, and it's an excuse to get together, and then we raise some money on the side. We're not raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we do something for the community, and have an excuse to hang out for 3 days and enjoy ourselves.
But it's nice when you're able to combine something that you enjoy with something that actually helps the community.
Totally, exactly, and that was very much us saying, we're going to do this anyway. Why don't we leverage this and do something? Let's do something that makes a difference, and pick a charity and steer some money towards it. So
I'm going to steer the conversation in a bit of a different direction. Sure. Not too different, but it's not always easy when you come to a new country. You're looking for a job, you're looking for something, and you go to these networking events, and sometimes people ask, okay, so what do you do for work? And so okay, I'm looking for a job right now, or maybe I'm just starting a career doing something as a survival job at the moment. But I've seen instances when others kind of hear that and they
switch off.
Exactly, switch off and go away and not talk. And how do you, or would you suggest, because I know you had those experiences as well at the beginning.
Yeah.
What was your experience about trying to navigate that?
That's a really great question. Honestly, it is. It can be very difficult. Can be quite disheartening. And coming here, working this job, learning how to fix fitness equipment, going to events, and look, particularly at that point, oil and gas events. Dating a geologist, going to these things, and it was always, what do you do? And if it wasn't geologist or engineer, you kind of get that glazed look, right? And I found it tough to begin with, and ultimately I found the easiest way for me to kind of manage that was be a little more loose with the description of what I did. And that went from, fixing fitness equipment to selling fitness equipment. And we did, as an organization, sell, but, I fixed. If I couldn't fix it, I would try and sell. But my default was fix. But then it became, so I work for a little company. We sell fitness equipment, kind of mostly commercial. We do a little bit of residential. And even that alone was enough to get probably a little more engagement from people. And it's, it wasn't like I was lying about what I did. I still kept it on message with what I was doing.
But it's packaging, right?
For sure, exactly. And that isn't always kind of easy or straightforward. But yeah, just kind of finding a different way to kind of talk about what I did. And, ultimately kind of say, hey, this isn't a reflection on what I do. It's maybe a reflection of the people that I'm stuck in a room with at any given time. And still coming back to what we were talking about before, put your best foot forward. It's at some point somebody is going to say, hey, that's awesome. How did you get into it? And, now you've got a conversation going again. And it's easy to say, you just, chin up and give it another shot. That stuff I didn't mind so much. What was a lot tougher for me was job hunting, bluntly. My education was kitchen management, which great, but it's not. I didn't have a stellar resume at the time. I always knew that my work ethic, my organization skills, my people leader skills would shine when given the opportunity. But on paper, as anybody who's ever applied for a job knows, it can be a grind. You can send out a lot of resumes and a lot of letters and a lot of emails and not get a lot of callbacks. So staying optimistic through that process, I think was harder than dealing with people, even if I'm having a bit of a block back then with, what I did versus what they did or whatever. I've always been able to find a way to have a conversation with people. But yeah, job hunting back then was definitely a challenging thing, and probably where I felt the most lonely as somebody kind of new in Canada. Even with a partner at the time, it was still. Yeah, it's still kind of a lonely undertaking. It's almost a full-time job looking for a job. So if you're working something and then get home, cook dinner, walk the dog, whatever that might be. And then it's like, hey, now sit down at my laptop and spend another 2, 3, 4 hours. And sometimes that's what it takes. But that can be tough. And again, it's all the same things. Stay optimistic, keep trying, keep asking those questions. But having anybody to kind of be around to support, I found vital, who could, offer moral support, offer advice, kick those things around. And then again, for all of that, the opportunity for me to build the career, and it's, certainly not just a job for me at GoodLife. It's become a really good and rewarding career for me. Was just it's one of those things. It was just lucky. Met somebody, made a good impression. Made sure I treated that person as well as I could. Did a good job for them. No idea who they were, or it was just that was my client for the day, and I made sure I did the best job I could. Yeah. And that turned into a phone call that turned into 6 interviews, and then a job. And
6 interviews.
It was a battle. It was talk to this person, a phone call here, and then a phone interview here, and then somebody else said, "Oh, I'm going to be in Calgary. I'll come and see you in person." And had a chat, and then somebody else wanted to come out and sit down, and it was a long and roundabout way. But the GoodLife, the service department, it's called club services. We work with our construction team to build the clubs, fill them with equipment, do all of the facility management, all of the fitness equipment service. Really broad scope of work that our department covers. Really grew from the ground up, and started out as a handful of people, and is now a department of close to 150. Our service personnel that I oversee directly is numbers about 100 of those. But they'd not really hired service managers and those positions externally. They were generally promoting from within. So for them to take a chance on me at the time felt like a big deal for them, and was kind of, it changed the way that they did some hiring, and changed the way that they looked at how they brought in different voices, I think.
But now let's, switching gears to that, because as you mentioned, you're managing 100 people. So you are a people leader at GoodLife right now. But you mentioned that sometimes your resume wasn't stellar. And I would assume sometimes you get resumes from people that are not the best resumes. Sure. And maybe they're good resumes, but they don't have what is, the fancy term is Canadian experience. Sure. Like everyone's, like a lot of hiring managers are talking about that. But what would you say, from people that you hired yourself, what would you give? You have examples where they were able to differentiate themselves. They say, okay, I'm not going to look at the resume. I'm looking at the person.
Yeah.
And
that's the person I want on the team.
Yeah, I mean, with a company our size, we have interview templates, we have fixed questions. We have to make sure we're doing kind of a very, very much a fair and equitable interview process. But I work with our talent acquisition team to make sure that we're not just asking. I don't just want to sit and ask technical questions for an hour and it's like, do you know how to fix this? Do you know how to repair that? As somebody who likes people and likes talking to people, I get so much out of, chatting with somebody. You can cover a lot of ground in a phone screen and hit the basics and hit the legal questions that we have to ask and really try and get a feel for somebody. And, I work with a team of service managers who are all a really interesting and very different group of service managers across the country, and really working with them to say, don't just look at a resume. If a resume's got to be pretty bleak for me not to encourage people to pick up the phone and talk to that person, right? Because you just don't know when you are going to get that right person. They're going to come with a spark. They're going to come with something, with a piece of experience that they didn't think was worthy of writing down, but is fascinating to us, is useful to us. And it's talking to people. It's keeping an open mind, having a conversation, and giving somebody the opportunity to show you that they will be a good fit. Maybe they haven't done this exact job on paper, but I have to approach it the same way that I got into the position that I'm in, which was having a little bit of relevant experience, a little bit of leadership experience, and convincing a couple of people at GoodLife that I was the right person to do the job. But it was, I always knew that the key at that point, going back 10, 12 years, the key to me finding my next kind of big opportunity to focus on was going to be getting in front of somebody and talking to them. As soon as I got that opportunity, I found the right thing.
That is excellent. And just continuing on the thread of the 100 people, I'm gonna assume, maybe it's not that wild of an assumption, but you have probably people from diverse backgrounds.
Yes. We've got a really, really wonderful mix of people across the country. I'm kind of directly manage a team of 8 service managers, hopefully 10 by the end of the year. We'll see how budgets go. But we're really pushing to expand our group and our scope of work. But
so maybe if you get the budget, maybe you'd like to share a word in terms of what kind of people you're looking for and encourage them to apply.
The technical, while we are a service and maintenance and repair department, I've always come down on the line that technical skills can be taught, and, kind of care, attention to detail, people skills, particularly if I'm hiring managers, service managers, I need people skills. Mm-hmm. I need compassion. I need the ability to not look at something that's been done wrong and say, why did you do a bad job? It's looking at that situation and saying, how have I not set you up to succeed? Mm-hmm. And really looking inwards. Those are the values in leadership that I really, really hold dear. Always looking at what we can do better, not why somebody did something wrong. Yeah. Those are things for leaders. For me, those are really, really important.
That's great. And on that note, when so you have the leaders, and then you have the
kind of service personnel, our service technicians. Yeah, so we've got about 90-ish service technicians at the moment in a few different roles.
From because of the different backgrounds, different cultures, how do you manage that?
The common thread is always in our service people, technical skill of some sort. Wildly diverse range of nationalities and backgrounds represented on our team. And a really wild range of skills. We've got people who have been fixing fitness equipment for 30 years, and we've got people who were drywallers, flooring people, mechanics, all kinds of stuff. We've, with some of our real success stories, I would say, within our team are people who had never worked with tools in their lives, but they showed something. They showed a work ethic. They showed a desire to learn. They showed an interest, an ability to learn and grow. And we took a chance on them. And they've turned into really, really talented, thoughtful, and skilled service personnel. So truly, it's. I mean, how do you manage it? The compassion I always come back to in leadership, right? It's making people feel cared for, making people feel good about the work that they're doing. I find is generally the best way to get the best results out of people. I never want that to sound manipulative. It's not. It's just, create an environment where people feel good about being successful, and they will go and be successful. That's it. Really, is like leading with compassion, and everybody responds to compassion. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what your background is. Kindness is super important, and I think sometimes underrated in leadership. It's making sure that people feel good, and they'll show up and they'll do a good job.
Kindness, I definitely agree, cannot be overstated. Yeah. It is such an important trait. As a human being, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast, is to show that being kind to each other is important, regardless of where we come from, what past experience we have. Like that's what will lead us to a better future.
Sure, absolutely. It's one thing I'd say. Fortunately, as being honest, like as an English-speaking white male, I don't have a lot of hardships in socially, right? That a lot of other people do, and I've still the ugly side of that I always get is somebody who feels comfortable because of the way I look, talking disparagingly about immigrants. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've always felt very strongly about, is never, ever, ever letting that lie, and making sure that anybody who says something like that gets a very sharp, what do you think my accent is? Because it's not the same as yours. I immigrated here. I might look like you, but I certainly don't think like you. And it's that kindness piece. It doesn't, it blows. It's still, I said I see so little of it compared to so many people who have a much, much harder time with that ugly side of humanity, right? But it's, just being kind, being welcoming, treat people well. It doesn't matter who they are, like how they ended up here or somewhere else. Like, treat people with kindness, and give people the opportunity to flourish.
And I like that, because it reminded me of what my grandmother taught me when I was growing up. She always said that there's no bad nationality, there are bad people.
Sure.
So I think it's very still relevant, in the sense that we all are humans. There will be bad apples and there will be good apples, in a sense, but we have to go above and just to try to see the person.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I'd say it is that simple, and it's obviously not for so many in so many ways, but everybody's just trying to get by. Everybody's trying to live and trying to be happy, and take care of their families, raise their families, raise up their people. It's always come back to that kindness and compassion, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's in life, whether it's in every interaction. We'll all have our bad days, and I'm gonna sit here and say I'm perfect with it. I'm not, but always trying to approach every interaction with people with a little care and a little kindness. It goes a long way.
But let's go back to the gym, because I want to talk about the importance of the gym, and I don't want to go too much about talking about focusing on the appearances,
sure,
and the performances. I know there could be stigma around that, the gym bro stigma type of thing. I don't want to go down that path, but I want to talk about the importance of actually going to the gym for a person, and be that if you're an immigrant, be that if you're not an immigrant, regardless. But for me, for example, I know that when I start going more stably and go continuously, it really helps me to unwind. It really helps me to, put maybe some of the negativities of the day and kind of recharge myself.
Sure.
So I want to talk about that a little bit.
So it's funny when I before pre-GoodLife, when I started working for my friend Charlie fixing gym equipment, I'd never had a gym membership. I said I played sports. High school culture in the UK, certainly the public high school that I went to and the other schools in the area did not have big fitness facilities. These were pretty run-of-the-mill kind of public high schools. Didn't grow up in gym culture. I got my exercise playing sports, playing, say, largely football and cricket, and played basketball a little in high school. But that was how I stayed fit as a youngster. Mm-hmm. In my 20s, I was traveling, we were active, busy doing stuff. I never really thought about it. And then, suddenly in late 20s and I'm in Calgary and start working, fixing gym equipment. And it was kind of like, God, I'm starting from scratch here. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't use the gyms. Had a couple of clients who were like, well, if you want to use the facility, come try this out. And, really was kind of steered towards it. Now in getting to be a part of GoodLife's culture for over a decade, seeing so many different reasons that people use the gym, whether it's health, whether it's achieving a goal, whether it's prepping for a physical challenge, whether it's that mental piece. And the mental piece, I think, is people are aware of it, but it's huge for people, right? Having that routine, having that, whether it's an hour of peace and quiet with their headphones in where, they don't have to think about anything else. But broadly, you've got hundreds, thousands of people a day in a space that are all trying to do something positive for themselves, right? And that's a really powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing to be a part of a business where that's the main goal. I have been spotty with my use of the gym. I'd say, from my late 20s, I was in good shape. Was working for GoodLife. It's that, I'm thinking about these gyms all day. Kind of the last thing I want to do after work is walk into one of them and spend more time. All I ever do in our gyms is, particularly for my piece of the business, right, keeping the gyms in good shape and being responsible for so many things around that. All I see is the problems. All I see is the things that we're failing at. That the team that I work with is the things that I'm missing. So I've had to get that mental block cleared, and we've got some really, really wonderful facilities, and I know I feel better when I'm moving. I know I've got less back pain, less knee pain, less hip pain when I'm using my body. So it's for me personally, it is really important to get in, and professionally, it's good for me to use our facilities, and particularly when I'm on the road. It's not just in Calgary, because I work nationally. I travel a lot. Getting into our clubs all over the country and seeing what we do well in different markets and everything else. But you really can't overstate it. I think the mental aspect more than the physical is probably the most important thing for so many people. It's having that doing something good for themselves. The sense of community, it's, you mentioned that you use a few of our clubs around the city here, and you see the same members when you go in, right? You're in there after work. You don't know them, but you see them. It's, a month goes by, a couple of months, and you'll get a nod from somebody. How you doing? Nice to see you.
Or see them at the Costco or something. It's just a given nod.
Exactly. And that sense of community is real. And not just in our gyms, obviously, but in, pre-GoodLife, I worked out in a couple of small independent gyms, and every morning, 6 o'clock, you'd see the same, 8, 10, 12 people in there. And you'd got that kind of sense of camaraderie and that sense of community. And again, as an immigrant, bring it back to that. There's a ready built community there if you want to seek it out, if you go looking for it. And it's, again, generally you mentioned kind of the gym bros, and, some of the biggest and scariest looking men I've ever seen are absolute, sweethearts and teddy bears, and are so supportive of anybody that's getting started on their fitness journey for the first time for whatever reason. Wildly supportive. To say these great big scary looking dudes who want nothing more than to see you add another 5 pounds and push that rep. So,
and also give good advice, because like myself, when I was just starting going to the gym, and this was still back home, I would have those scary looking people approach, say, you're not doing this entirely correctly, that you might hurt your back, or you might do some other damage to yourself. So this is how you should do it, and kind of help you out there.
Absolutely. And it's there's very little gatekeeping with it, right? They want everybody, people who care that much about being in the gym and their fitness. Yeah, I never see any gatekeeping with it. It's always, how can I share this, and how can I make sure that you get as much out of this as I do, which is really heartwarming, honestly.
And I love how you brought it back to the immigrants and the community building, because it's so true. When you come, you're lonely, you don't have a community, and the gym is a great place to start. And not just the gym. Maybe you are, like I said, like a football player. Maybe you'll find some 10, 12 people. I did that when I moved here as well. When we went to some football games and played some football with some people. Then maybe you enjoy cricket, or maybe you enjoy squash or something else, right? Like, it's depending on that.
I think when you're in a new place, potentially one of the biggest barriers for entry is money, right? You need to find a job, you need to find a place to live, you need to kind of get settled and have those basics covered. And there is frequently, for any organized sports, the gym, everything else, there's always, a financial barrier to entry, right? But, you look at the gym, and I'll shout out our other brand, Fit for Less, right? But, when you look at Fit for Less at $10-12 a month to have access to some really, really well-equipped, great gyms, that barrier to entry is very low. Same with sports. You can go to, a ball diamond and play pickup softball, basketball courts. There are so many things that, even hiking and like hiking clubs, and that's something that's potentially a really good way to meet people. It's kind of find your interest, your interest, find your interest. The internet is vast and super useful, right? There are communities out there for everything. And
you don't need money for hiking.
You don't need money for hiking, right? Throw on a pair of shoes and go for a walk, and find a group of people who are doing organized hikes. And
honestly, the hiking has become a bigger thing. I get so many different invites to do networking while hiking.
Yeah,
it's amazing how it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing.
I feel like societally, I'd say I love restaurants. I mentioned, after high school, I trained as a chef. When I lived in New Zealand, I sold wine for a living and worked in wineries and vineyards, and I love the hospitality industry. I love restaurants. I'm a fierce champion for a number of restaurants around town, and I try and be a regular in a few places. But societally, people are drinking less. Cost of living is going up. A lot of people have, less money, fewer resources than they've maybe had before to spend on restaurants, food, drinks, things like that. Like I said, I've got a lot of friends who, again, as we get a little older, and also people who are younger that just don't drink. Maybe they did and they've stopped, or again, kind of a generation behind me maybe that are growing up and just saying, no, drinking's not for me. So you're starting to see this with whether it's team building events, whether it's corporate kind of meet and greets, whether it's all those kinds of things where it's like, get them out of bars, right? Get them away from what was always just kind of restaurants, bars, and do things that are, somewhat maybe physically active, outdoors. It's just a change of scenery, right? For to get away from kind of what's always been a fallback, always been a mainstay for so much of that stuff centered around drinking. And again, while I do like a glass of wine, I like a cocktail, it's not a bad thing to have options that are potentially more inclusive, going to bring more people in, because it's not centered around something that they maybe don't have any interest in, or maybe have a difficult relationship. Exactly. So many reasons. So that's it's a really nice thing, and it's nice to see people getting more creative with ways to bring people together.
And I agree with that. It's becoming more and more creative. That's a good way to put it. And I also want to ask you, I think, I see there's a big similarity between the immigrant journey and between the journey that the person takes at the gym, is that they don't know where they end up, or they know maybe where they want to end up, but it's hard to keep track when you are in the process. So for example, let's say when you just started working and repairing machinery, did you imagine that you're going to lead like 100 people?
Exactly.
Or when a person goes their first day in the gym, kind of keeping track of how the body will change over time. is also kind of hard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And staying motivated in the process is very difficult. So maybe you would have some advice for people going through the journey, be that a career journey, be that a gym journey,
sure.
but advice to keep them motivated.
This is probably a do as I say, not as I do thing, but documenting things I think is really important. It's very easy to forget when you're in the process how much progress you've already made.
So documenting things, you mean like keeping track of the progress?
Yeah, keeping track of your progress, whether it's in the gym, whether it's, are you lifting more? Are you doing more complex compound movements? You're adding more weight, you're doing more reps. For life, it's, whether you're applying for jobs or, you're making connections, document it, make notes of, who you spoke to, we talked about having conversations with people and, not treating things as transactional. It's not what can I get out of this person, so I'm going to put a better effort forward. But, it's you meet somebody and they, give you a phone number, say, shoot me an email, hey, let's talk, like follow up, document that, make a note who they were, what was the context of it. If you're applying for jobs, if you're growing your skills, if you're having a hard time, you're feeling stuck and you're trying to find that next opportunity, focus on the good, focus on your growth. It's not just, hey, I'm stuck in this job. It's what can I do? How can I leverage this current situation to set me up better for the next one? It's easy. It was easy for me to say, hey, I'd be really good. I just need somebody to hire me. But that's not a resume. It's like really, really drilling into the things that you do well and, over time adding to those things, leveraging your current situation to improve, whether that's, opportunities to develop skills that you haven't really thought about, you haven't realized, but you are developing them. Just keeping an open mind. It's, if you document all the things that you're doing, you really keep track of all the things that you're doing. Maybe you realize that a pivot might be a good idea into a different industry or a different line of work and opening up your mind to exploring a different avenue. I think, and again, I don't always do a great job of keeping track of things. And then something will come up where I need to sit down and think about, what I'm doing and why. And, my current role with GoodLife only changed about a year ago. And I went through some interviews and it was kind of like, gosh, I haven't been interviewed for 10 years, right? And I went through interview process at GoodLife to join the company. My role changed probably 3 times over the kind of almost 10 years with expanding responsibilities. And again, kind of saying yes to things. It was, would you consider moving to Ontario? Yes. Okay, great. Then we'd like to look at offering you more work, more responsibility. But I had to say yes to that. And Carling, my wife, the best thing that happened to me when I decided to stay in Calgary was meeting her and getting married. She had to agree to it as well. She also had to say yes. So we moved, job changed. And then a year ago, we got this, potential opportunity to change roles again with GoodLife, but I had to interview for it. Mm-hmm. And that was when it made me really sit down and think about, what's changed from the last time you wrote a resume. What's changed? What skills have you developed? Make it, now's your opportunity, make it count. And that was when I really realized the different skills that I'd added, it changed my leadership style, changed the way that I dealt with people. And sitting and writing it out and turning it into a resume that was only for an internal job application. I wasn't sending it to a new company. I wasn't sending it to a stranger. I was sending it to our director of talent acquisition, who I know and adore. Writing that stuff out was really, really important for me to kind of focus on my skills, my development, how far I'd come. I found that really interesting.
So in terms of preparation for the interviews, I think this is important for the immigrant community in general, is that sometimes we go to an interview and we're not fully prepared. Mm-hmm. So when someone comes to you that the person is not prepared and you're interviewing them, that is, I would assume, very evident, right?
Yes, for sure. And some things... It's probably something that you develop with time and with interviewing people, is kind of figuring out whether somebody is kind of unprepared or maybe nervous or maybe there's a language barrier versus being unsuitable. And that you don't always know. And I've hired some people who I thought were the right move and they were not. I would never pretend that all of the people I've hired over the last decade have been hits. They have not. Over the course of, an hour, 2 hours of conversation, people can portray themselves in a way and you buy into it and maybe it doesn't work out. Likewise, you can have a difficult interview with somebody and take a chance on them anyway and they turn out to be brilliant. And it's always a small sample size, but that stuff comes with experience. And, being able to see through nerves is a big one.
How do you battle through? Like, how should it's always hard when you're interviewing. You're nervous. You don't have a job.
Yeah.
You're kind of relying,
putting pressure on yourself.
Yeah. You're the one exactly putting more pressure on yourself than the kind of the hiring manager. Yeah. How do you go about that?
You mentioned preparation, right? It's going into those things. You do all the preparation that you can. You study the job, and actually, Simon, again, this is do as I say, not as I do. When I interviewed with GoodLife, I really didn't fully understand the scope of the company, and even then, the size of the company. And I kind of looked at it in Calgary terms and said, oh yeah, they've got 8, 10 gyms here. How many can they have? I had over 300 when I joined the company back then, and it was it was
you were a little off.
This is a big, and that was nationwide, and that was across 2 brands, but it was like, this is a huge company, and so I didn't go into that eyes wide open. So that was a lesson for me back then: is do your prep. The company that you're interviewing for, learn about them, learn as much as you can. And Google is a really useful tool. Learn about what the company does. Learn as much as you can about the role itself. And I mean, it's easy to say it, but kind of believe in yourself. They've picked you for an interview for a reason. So remember that you have something that they're interested in, and they want to talk to you about that. And I mean, we're sat here talking about obviously a bunch of different things, but I'm talking about myself for an hour, which is not comfortable for everybody. And it's it was nervous coming in to sit down and talk. And it's, interviews particularly is the one time where you have to be your own biggest champion, right? Yeah. And again, not always easy, but you have to go in knowing that you are the right person. And it's not an easy mindset thing to necessarily change, but it is important to approach that. And I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice for interviews is, as part of your prep has to be self-belief. It has to be, I am the right fit for this, and if you don't hire me, you're making a mistake.
And it's great that you raised that, because I do find that in some cultures, we were told to be humble.
Yes.
Like back when I was a kid, I was going, don't brag. That's bragging.
It's bragging, exactly.
But when you're interviewing, it's not bragging, because they don't know about you.
Exactly.
If you don't share your positive stories, what you have achieved, where your developments as a person, how will they know?
How will they know? You might have 45 minutes or an hour to convince these people that you're the right fit, and it's really is. And I mean, I'm English. We're much like Canada, a nation of people who say sorry and say excuse me and apologize. Right? Don't want to be a burden. Don't want to be a hassle. It's the one time, and I've said this to people. I mean, I've interviewed people, and internal people, particularly for jobs that they don't get. If we've got a promotion opportunity coming, there's always lots of interest, and there's one role, and picking the right person is super important. But I'd say equally as important is making sure that the people who weren't successful hear why, and get the opportunity to grow, right? Mm-hmm. Get the opportunity. There will be other opportunities. There always are. Yeah. So making sure that those people who kind of put themselves in that position and deserved an interview have the opportunity to do better next time. It's like, it might not be that you don't have the skills. It might be that you weren't as good a fit as this person, but the next opportunity comes. These are the things I want you to work on. These are the things I want you to think about. Yeah. And from my perspective, again, particularly with internal candidates for opportunities, that my piece of that journey doesn't stop there. It's not just get the feedback, but then provide structure on where to go with it next. And here's resources, here's ideas. Take this course, read this book. And you're not going to get that from a random company interview, but it's
hard to get feedback
for sure. Yeah. But it's still something, even for external candidates. I'm not rushing out to give it to them. If I kind of make a decision and hire and move forwards, but if somebody reaches out, I will always take the time to walk through what I liked and what I didn't about the interview, and ultimately why we're landing in a different spot. And again, if I interview a dozen people for a role, it's half of them, 3/4 of them are external. I'm not calling them all up to tell them, just not. But if somebody asks, if somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, what can I do differerly?" then they will get a phone call, an email, as many thoughts as they want, if they want to know.
It's a good thing that you do that, but we had an HR professional here as well, and their advice was, not advice, but they mentioned that it's not always good to give feedback because there could be legal liability.
Sure, yeah, and so we, again, with a company of our size, we have a pretty narrow scope of what we can do and what we can't. Never want to cross our associate relations team, but it's finding that balance is important, right? And giving people what we can, certainly.
And then just, we are at the top of the hour, so I wanted to wrap this up with asking you for some wisdom or motivation.
Wisdom or motivation? Wisdom from me, it's probably surround yourself with people who build you up. Mm-hmm. Building relationships and building strong relationships is hard. It takes work. It takes effort. But making sure that the people that you give your time and energy to are lifting you up. And I'm not talking kind of boundless optimism, unrealistic levels of kind of hype. You need your trusted people to be honest, and you need them to be real with you. But if you're running into somebody who always says no, we can't do that, no, you can't do that, question that relationship. Self-belief is such a powerful thing, and the belief of your loved ones, your cherished people, is a powerful thing. And when we're talking about changing countries, making a change like that, you might have a small circle of people to begin with that you need to rely on, and they should be hyping you, it should be elevating you, they should be a positive force, because self-belief is something that is going to go a long way. That's how you walk into an interview knowing that you should get this job. And if the people around you don't help you believe that, that's really hard. That's a really tough thing. So surround yourself with people, and also be that person, right? Mm-hmm. Be the person that lifts others around you. And that can be personal, it can be professional. The tougher feedback is important, and the honest feedback is important. But ultimately, you want to be working with and living around people who are, trying to raise you and trying to lift you up.
People who are your support system,
exactly.
Basically. This is a great way to end this. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. I think this conversation was lovely.
Yeah.
And we appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Hopefully, the listeners can get a little something out of it. And this was, Samir, a real treat. I'm really, really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.